Today's episode isn't a sermon, it's a battle plan. Today we're going to go down the rabbit hole a little bit, and we're going to look at a powerful organized movement that is working to remake American government, and they believe that they have a divine mandate to do it. Right? We're talking about Christian nationalism, right? And they've created a holy war going on here in America. And at its heart is a political quest for power that threatens the very foundations of this constitutional republic. And in this video, we're going to expose their plan to seize control of American political power. See, to understand what's happening here, you first have to understand the ideology that's fueling it, right? Christian nationalism. Now, this isn't about being a Christian who is also a patriot. Those two aren't the same very thing at all, right? Christian nationalism is a political ideology that wants to merge Christian and American values and Christian and American identities, right? It pushes the idea that to be a true American, you must also be a Christian, and that the nation's laws should reflect Christian values, that they should reflect a specific interpretation of the Bible, right? Scholars define this as an ideology that pushes for a fusion of Christianity with American civic life, right? But this completely rejects the American principle of religious pluralism and the idea that all of us are equal under law to believe what we want to believe, to worship the God we want to worship, or none at all. Right? And this isn't some kind of fringe belief either. According to a 2024 PRRI data poll, about 3 in 10 Americans are either adherents or sympathizers of Christian nationalism, right? And those numbers have been kind of stable over the last few years, with a majority of them leaning as conservatives. But this movement is growing, and it's got a lot of powerful voices out there that are seeking to insert the influence into American civic life. At the center of this movement is a theology of dominion. And a core belief for many of them is something called the 7 Mountains Mandate. And this is the idea that Christians are commanded by God to take control or to take dominion over 7 key spheres of society: government, media, arts, education, family, business, and religion. The language they use is often military style sounding, right? They tell their followers to invade these cultural mountains and to occupy them until society is actually transformed into their worldview. This idea has been around since the 70s, but has been kind of supercharged in recent years by a group of people known as the New Apostolic Reformation. And these leaders are often seen as modern day prophets by their followers, and they've become deeply influential in politics, right? They frame elections and policy debates as spiritual warfare, using an us versus them mentality, and they use this rhetoric to fire up the base by arguing that they're fighting demonic forces for the very soul of the nation, right? Does all this kind of sound familiar to you, right? You kind of look around and see what's happening. It's kind of going on, isn't it? Think about someone in certain circles who's been elevated to almost a deity status, right? There's even certain podcasters out there saying that they've prayed to him, right? This isn't just abstract theology. This is a recruitment tool. It's a strategic plan for a divinely sanctioned takeover, right? It provides spiritual justification for a power grab in politics that turns policy debates into holy crusades. And they also have a detailed playbook for how they're going to get it done. And if this 7 Mountains Mandate is the why, then Project 2025 is the how. Now, Project 2025 is this massive 900-page policy playbook that was created by the Heritage Foundation, and probably 100 other conservative groups helped them out with it, right? The Heritage Foundation, now they've updated, there's a Project 2026 playbook, but it's still largely the same, right? It's designed to be a go-to guide for the first 180 days of any new conservative administration that gets elected into office, right? And with the midterms coming up, they're specifically starting to gather their forces and to make their push, right? Many critics have kind of called this a comprehensive plan for enacting a Christian nationalist style of life in America, right? Project outlines a radical overhaul of the federal government. It's built on a broad interpretation of presidential power called the unitary executive theory, which aims to put the entire executive branch, including historically independent agencies like the DOJ and the FBI, under president's direct control. Plan also details dismantling agencies like the Department of Education, firing tens of thousands of civil servants and replacing them with politically vetted loyalists. And while its authors from the Heritage Foundation defend the project as a plan for government efficiency and a return to traditional values, denying direct ties to Christian nationalism, critics from the ACLU to Interfaith Alliance argue that it's a blueprint for authoritarianism. They warn that it weaponizes and enforces a narrow, regressive social agenda, creating a country that serves one exclusionary vision of America. The ideas that are driving this movement aren't just hypothetical. They've already exploded into the mainstream and into the real world with seismic results. The clearest example was cited around January 6th at the U.S. Capitol. Right now, no matter how you feel about January 6th, I'm just simply stating what was visible here, okay? I'm not arguing the potential for a psyop, right? Regardless, okay, the operation was drenched in symbols of Christian nationalism, right? Attackers carried Jesus Save signs and Christian flags, and they held prayer sessions in the Senate chamber, thanking God for letting them take back their government. And in the days before that, they had what they called Jericho marches, where they circled the Capitol, marching and invoking biblical verses, and telling the story of Jericho's walls tumbling down. There were multiple reports that detailed how Christian nationalism acted as a permission slip, right, given moral and spiritual justification for what they did. Now, like I said, I'm not getting into the debate about that, whether it was a psyop or not. This is just what's visible. This is what the average everyday American saw. But you see, the fight goes just beyond that one particular day. What we're actually seeing is an influence across the country, right, in attempts to breach the wall between church and state. Now, I discussed this topic in another video earlier. There will be links down below in the description box to check that out if you want to. I highly recommend it, right? What we're looking at here is this is a threat that's not in the future. It's a threat that's happening right now. The battle's already here. It's in our school boards. It's in our state houses. It's in our courts, right? It's a widespread effort to chip away at the secular foundation of American government, at the secular foundation of the Constitution, and they're trying to do it one policy at a time. So what are all the ultimate stakes in this? What kind of America would we have if all of this ideology took over? Well, it would be a nation where our religious freedoms are reserved for only a select few people, right? The separation of church and state, the very principle that Thomas Jefferson talked about building a wall on, the Establishment Clause in the Constitution of the United States, right? The very principle that protects everyone's right to believe or not believe as they choose would be torn down. The government would be empowered, right, to enforce one vision of morality, right? And they had abandoned the pluralism that the country's been founded on and that the country has lived on forever. I mean, the founding fathers, one of their main things was, the freedom of religion. That's why a growing number of Christian leaders have actually become the loudest critics of Christian nationalism, right? Groups like the Christians Against Christian Nationalism, which includes leaders from all sorts of denominations, they've called the ideology a dangerous distortion of gospel and a threat to both democracy and Christian faith. Now, they argue that mixing political power with religious authority is a form of idolatry, right? And that Christianity is cheapened because of that, right? The fight against Christian nationalism is not a fight to them against Christianity, right? It's a fight to preserve a vital distinction between the two. The risk is replacing a government of the people, by the people, and for the people with one that serves a single, narrow, exclusionary vision of a Christian nation. They talk about how we're fighting for our spiritual warfare, or that they talk about how America is in a spiritual war, right? And this movement is the one that waged the holy war, right? For America's government, for America's political power. They're well-funded, they're highly organized, and they're deeply committed, right? They operate through a vast network of think tanks, legal groups, the whole 9 yards, media platforms, right? And they push these coordinated agendas. Understanding this movement is the first step into countering it, right? This isn't about partisanship, okay? It's about the fundamental principles of American democracy and religious freedom. The point isn't to tell you what to think. We'd never try to do that here on this channel, right? All we're trying to do is get you to think, right? But we want to give you the information so that you can see what's at stake and make up your own mind, okay? And if you found this video informative, right, please share it, right? Doing research for this video, I found that this rabbit hole with the 7 mountains mandate, it goes very deep and it's very dark, right? And so the best defense against an ideology like this is understand it and drag it into the light. We have to remove it from the shadows and bring it to the light, right? Awareness is our most powerful weapon, right? And the future of a pluralistic, democratic, constitutional republic depends on a public that is well informed, engaged, and is also vigilant. The question is no longer if the battle is coming. The question is, how are we going to respond to it? Well, anyway, thanks for listening.